Hey friends, in Isaiah chapter number 32, the prophet gives us the proclamation of the righteous reign of the king. In verse 1, he starts and he says, "Behold, a king will reign in righteousness, and princes will rule in justice." There is a time coming when all things will be brought into subjection to the reign of the Lord Most High. Now we know that He is a sovereign God and perfectly in control of all things. He has a plan and He's bringing it to fruition. But I love the idea that our King is going to reign in righteousness. As we look at governments in the world, we see so much unrighteousness, so much promotion of, good being bad and bad being good, and so much deceit and corruption. And he says, we have a king coming who will rule in righteousness, and princes will rule in justice. Well, who are those? That's the believer who comes and rules and reigns with him. Excuse me. In 1 Corinthians, Paul was, rebuking, reminding the Christians that of who they were. There was so much turmoil in the church. The people were bringing civil cases against each other. And Chapter 6, he says, when one of you has a grievance against another, does he dare go to law before the unrighteous instead of the saints? So Paul is very clear. He says, what are you doing going to a civil court run by unrighteous or unbelievers? He says, don't you know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? Do you not know that we are to judge angels? How much more than matters pertaining to this life? He's kind of like saying, wake up to who you are and whose you are and your destiny. The Lord is going to have a perfect rule and reign, and you're going to rule and reign with Him. And then I think of Hebrews chapter 2, verse number 8. He says, putting everything in subjection under His feet. Now, in putting everything in subjection to Him, He left nothing outside of His control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to Him. He's saying, listen, when Jesus did His perfect, complete sacrifice, He overthrew the power of sin and Satan, and He is truly Lord over all. Now, right now, you look around at the chaos in the world and you don't see that. You wonder what's going on. That's what the writer of Hebrews was saying. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection, but it's coming. And you're a part of that. That's why when Paul was at the end of his ministry and ready to give his life, he spoke to Timothy, or wrote to Timothy. He says, if we endure, we also will reign with Him. If we deny Him, He will also deny us. And I don't think he was trying to scare Timothy straight. I think he was just simply reminding him that we have a king who rules and reigns over our lives. And we're going to reign with Him. Those who deny His reign will not be a part of that. I mean, think way back in Daniel 7. Verse 27, Daniel says, and the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. The beauty of knowing that the future is secure no matter how chaotic it seems to us today. And you and I, as the saints, have a part in that. Now, I know that there are certain denominations and churches that say, well, the saints are a special class of people. But nowhere in the scripture is that found. A saint is one who is sanctified, one who has been separated to God. And you, if you have truly entrusted yourself to him, truly believed on him and his finished work, are now a saint. We may not always act like it, but that is who we are. And we have a beautiful destiny that one day, no matter how small we might be thought of in the eyes of the world, we saints will rule with our King, for we belong to the Most High. In Revelations 5:10, he says that you have made them a kingdom and priests to our God, and they shall reign on the earth. So that's who we are. That's our destiny. Well, then in verse 3 of Isaiah 32, he says, then the eyes of those who see will not be closed, and the ears of those who hear will give attention. The heart of the hasty will understand and know, and the tongue of the stammerers will hasten to speak distinctly. The fool will no more be called noble, nor the scoundrel said to be honorable. He said everything's going to be turned upside down. The unrighteous who are thought highly of will no longer be considered noble. The eyes will come clear. The veil will be removed. The ears unplugged. And man will hear and understand. In verse 8, he says, but he who is noble plans noble things, and on noble things he stands. Do you see it? There's an absolute transformation that takes place. When we, who were sinners, are made righteous, we're given both a new standing and a new nature and a whole new view on living. All because he poured out his Spirit into us. And as we yield to his indwelling presence, our thoughts, our mind, our feelings, our actions are transformed by him to reflect him, that our lives become a diffuser of all that he is. In verse 15, he says, until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness blooms a fruitful field, and the fruitful field is deemed a forest, then justice will dwell in the wilderness, and righteousness abide in the fruitful field. And the effect of righteousness will be peace, and the result of righteousness, quietness, and trust forever. My people will abide in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and at quiet resting places. Well, that sure sounds good, doesn't it? Because as we live in this fallen world, we can easily be distracted and come to despair and feel hopeless. And he reminds us that when we live out of the righteousness that is ours, because his Spirit has been poured out upon us, we can have a peaceful habitation even amongst the chaos of this world. Rest in him. Well, Isaiah points to a time in the future, but don't let that time be isolated to your future. It will be fulfilled in its fullness in the future. But let it be your present reality, for you are his, and he is yours, for he is king. And our part is simply to live in obedience surrendered to his indwelling presence, to release the essence of his life, which is ours. Well, I hope you feel encouraged and you have a great day. You're loved.